Baby, on MMA Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Go. This is what we do and why we do it, baby. We rollin'!
Covering MMA from all over the world, this is the premier stop for all your combat sports needs. MMA Junkie Radio, the only show broadcasting live from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. The lights are on and the mics are hot. It's time to get your MMA fix, junkies. Take it away, Big John.
Gorgeous George and Goes, are you ready? Junkie Nation, are you ready? Well, let's get it on.
From the fight capital of the world inside the beautiful Mandalay Bay Race and Sportsbook, this is MMA Junkie Radio, the only show that matters. I am Goes. To my right is Richard Hunter from Phone Booth Fighting. Not George. George is off today. George is at Dana White's Contender Series.
Yes.
And Richard has agreed to fill in when that happens.
We've worked out an arrangement.
Mm-hmm. I basically have to give him a liver or a kidney by the end of your bully thing, right? What's it called? Not bully. What,
Wimp to Warrior.
Wimp to Warrior.
You feel like I may need a kidney and or liver transplant?
How do you know that I'm not saying you may not need it to offer to somebody else?
Well, that's possible. Oh, I see. So like you or first of all, if I need one of you guys to give up a liver, that's going to be a problem because I
can give you a piece.
Can you do a piece? Is that how that works?
I think, right?
Okay. I know you can't just outright like
no, you need that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if I so brutally abuse my opponent that they need that type of transplant, you guys, in exchange for me filling in on these Tuesdays, would be compelled to offer that. Now, who would give what? Have you and George worked that out ahead of time, or are you guys like, he's going to lose this fight again? We need to think about that.
I would imagine you wouldn't want my liver. George probably drinks more water, so you'd probably want his kidneys.
Yeah. Keep in mind, this is going to my opponent, though. I don't care about that. Like,
well,
I'm
of course.
If it's me, though, I guess I do need to consider these.
What
things.
else can you give? That's it, right?
Yeah, without being dead. I mean, you can.
I need everything else, right?
Yeah.
So your pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll see how I feel about my opponent after the fight.
Sure.
If I want to give him the better of the two livers.
Or it could be an earthquake. Because you never know. We've been having a lot of those. And anytime I see anything move in like the last week, I've been freaking out.
That must have caused you a lot of... I'm guessing the last week you've seen a lot of movement.
Dude, it's been messing with you. We're going to get to that in a second. I want to remind everyone that on today's show, we have the natural, Randy Couture. He's going to come on and preview PFL. He'll be on at 5:30, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And Chris Curtis, the headliner from that card, he will be on at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And I anticipate having fun with both of them. I like them both. They're both good guys. We're going to recap a little bit of what we were talking about yesterday. So yesterday we had Jorge Masvidal come in, and we were talking about the main card of UFC 239, but we didn't really dive in too much into the undercard and all the other things that came along with it.
So much to talk about.
So we're going to clean some of that up, but we invite you guys to call in. 877-344-4893. That's 877-FIGHT-93. You can call in and join in on the discussion if you're afraid of earthquakes. If you got takes on UFC 239, whatever you like, it's up to you. Right, Richard?
That's right.
Back to earthquakes.
Yes.
Okay. I grew up with earthquakes. But when I say that, all I really mean is I've probably been through 15 of them, maybe. And
that's 15 more than me.
Half of them I didn't even know happened. It's just kind of you read the newspaper at the time, or somebody tells you, hey, did you feel that? Oh, really? We had one. And then the other half were like, hey, do you feel that? Do you think it's a truck? No. Okay, it's an earthquake. But there were about 3 of them where you were like, what the hell's going on? This is scary. Because I've been away from the game so long, I've been in Nevada now 11 years.
Been out of the earthquake game.
I've been out of the earthquake game. I was in bed for the first one, and it was just kind of like being on a boat. You know, it was kind of swaying a little bit. By the time I got up to go check on George, he was already sending me a text like, do you feel that? And then it was over.
You guys didn't sleep in bunk beds?
No.
That's what I imagine you doing now.
You're thinking of like different strokes, right? We had one of those rooms.
I imagine you sleeping in bunk beds, and George is on the bottom, and he snores, and he does that every time he
it's actually
exhales.
Kind of close. We did share a room for a long time, for many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the Popeye-ish.
Yeah, that's how the Three Stooges sleep when they all sleep together.
He had a twin bed. I had a twin bed, but his was a water bed.
Oh.
And I think I confessed this about a year ago to him. One day, I put a needle inside of my shoe so that when somebody would kick a ball to me, I could pop it, and then we'd go, "Oh, what happened to the ball?" I thought it was funny. And one day, I jumped up on his bed, and my shoe popped his water bed, but it was very, very small. It was a really small needle, so not that much water came out. So it just kind of like leaked very, very slowly. I didn't even know if I had done it or anything, but in the middle of the night, I see George kind of wake up, and this is the 80s, and he's tidy whities generation. So he gets up, and he's like in a panic, and he's grabbing all his sheets and all that, and he's putting it all together, and I think he shoved them in the closet, and then he went out, and I don't know what he did. And I'm like, oh, that's weird, I didn't even think about it. And then apparently, he goes, man, he goes, I thought I wet the bed or whatever. It turns out, I think like when he sat back down, it started to squirt up a little bit, and then he was like, there's a hole in my bed. But he thought he'd wet his pants. I did that, and I didn't confess that until about a year ago to him. So for years, he thought he had either wet the bed or there was something wrong with his bed.
Good for you for holding out all these years.
Yeah, but we didn't do that. So, right, that's first earthquake.
Sure.
Second one, I was actually at Adam Hunter's show, the Stratosphere, which when you think about hotels in Las Vegas, has to be the last hotel you want to be in during an earthquake. It's tall and it's skinny. You don't feel like you have that support.
I see.
That was very scary because that one lasted about a good minute of like, it would get worse, and it would die down, and it would get worse. People were starting to do that thing like, should we run out in a panic? A few people ran out.
Now, did it turn out it was just because of the uproarious laughter?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what ended up happening.
Then didn't you feel silly? But now, is that why you did not come to my show opening for Adam Hunter at the Stratosphere this past Sunday night because you feared the earthquake?
Pretty much.
Jeez.
That and I didn't want to ruin my liver.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, you're taking care of it. I appreciate that.
Today we have Kelly. You're producing, right?
Yes.
You've never been through an earthquake, I take it?
I have not.
Are you in New York or New Jersey?
New York.
Why does New York?
Long Island.
Okay, so New Yorkers, whenever you tell them, like, hey, would you ever move to the West Coast? The first thing they say is, earthquakes, are you crazy? But every disaster movie hits New York. So basically we have Independence Day, which they got clowned too in that. But you guys have King Kong, Godzilla, Day After Tomorrow. I mean, you guys are getting worked left and right. What is it that you guys fear out there? Storms, right? Snow?
Yeah, we get a lot of snow. I went to school in Syracuse, so it was a lot. Traffic, but traffic's on the west too, just as bad.
Yeah, ours is pretty
especially LA.
Subways?
Yeah, I guess snow. Yeah, the subway sucks. But that's only when I'm here. I mean, like, as far as just New York as a whole, I would go snow or storms, not like earthquakes, though.
There's not really a natural disaster, other than like when hurricanes have been problematic the last few years.
But I like when they come over and they experience an earthquake because it freaks them out.
I
can understand.
I still have yet to see one. My extent of being affected by an earthquake up to this point is more of an annoyance, which is this thing that my mother does where she has to call to see if I'm okay because she saw on the news that you could feel an earthquake in Las Vegas that happened in Southern California. And I never get that, okay, something happened where, 30 million people live. Let me call that one person I know and see if they're okay. Now, if I don't hear from them in like a week or two, maybe I start getting concerned, but I'll just look at your Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, well, that got posted 3 hours ago.
As long as he's like posting in and out or something, he's okay.
Yeah.
Facebook has that new check-in feature as well. That
That's
after
right.
those natural disasters, you can check in and
Yes.
everyone knows you're all good.
Do you guys like that? I'm kind of on the fence of that. I feel
Of
like
the check-in?
if I'm one of the first ones to do it,
Yeah.
I feel like people open it up and go, oh, look who thinks they're important.
Right. You know what I want to do? I just want to be able to leave it on to automatically I'm okay.
Every day?
And then if I'm not okay, I'll go on there and change it to not okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm indifferent except for if there's, let's say, an earthquake in California, the people in, like, Pennsylvania check in that they're okay. It's like, we know.
Oh, yes.
Who are those people?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you be?
Those people are being ironic.
Yeah, you got to delete them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Delete them. At least, like, put them in jail for a little bit or something.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about this. UFC 239. A lot of good stories came out of it. And I don't want to say a lot of bad stories came out. But there was a crop of fighters that some of us feel it's either time for them to go away or it's time for them to go somewhere else. There's a few that it's time to take a break. I want to know where you're at on this, Richard Hunter. I'm going to give you a name. You tell me what you think.
Mm-hmm.
These are some of the names that came up. Holly Holm.
You want me to take them one by one, or you want to run
One
them
by
all
one.
down?
Okay, I'll give you one more.
Okay.
Luke Rockhold.
Mm-hmm.
Holly Holm. Gilbert Melendez, who, by the way, released a statement today that was somewhat confusing, but we know the answer now.
Mm-hmm.
And Diego Sanchez.
Okay. Let me work in reverse order there. Of any of them who I think we don't need to worry about retiring right at this moment would be Diego Sanchez, just for this reason. I mean, he got completely dominated in that fight this weekend, but he got grappled to death. But he also looked impossible to finish throughout. I mean, he had every bit of his iron will intact. Chiesa had the superior grappling, and that's what won him the fight. But I was more concerned about the fact that Diego had a life coach cornering him than I did what I actually saw in the octagon. Now, I'm not saying Diego Sanchez needs to fight another 10 years, but I just think that Diego being Diego and where he is compared to what I've seen out of him recently and things like that, that's fine. It was a latter day Diego Sanchez performance where he came up short, but to me, he still looked like a total badass doing it because he was just not going to be finished. So I'll move him aside.
I'm going to co-sign with you. Okay. I don't feel like he needs to retire, and I don't necessarily feel like he needs to go away because you're right. He was competitive in the fight. There were times where he switched positions on Michael.
Yeah.
Now, Michael got out of it a lot quicker than Diego did the other way around. He was just kind of outclassed that night.
Yep.
But I felt like that could have happened to a lot of guys in that division if they faced Michael Chiesa that night. So, Diego, I think we're safe. Here's what we have to contend with on that. That was the last fight on Diego Sanchez's contract. So now the UFC has to make the decision, do we re-sign him and give him more money, which is probably something he's been looking for, or do we just part ways with the guy? With a guy like Diego, with everything that he's done. Now, think about tonight is Dana White's Contender Series. What's the one thing you know that Dana wants out of their fighters, right?
Finishes,
just nonstop, relentless. Keep at least going for the finish if you're not going to get it. Who am I describing?
Diego Sanchez.
Diego Sanchez, right? How many great fights has he put on? So just by that alone, the fact that a Season 1 guy has outlived Season 2 and almost all of Season 3, you kind of just give him the money, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You just kind of say, look, man, we appreciate everything you've done for this company. You can keep fighting until either yourself or us feel it's too much. But here's your new contract.
I believe
to see him pop up somewhere else would kind of suck, I think.
Yep, I believe you do. I always err on the side of that. Whenever you're talking about career company men or women, and they're not at the very end of their career, but they got a few more years maybe, and then a few more handful of fights. Even if you're going to pay them a little more than you would any other fighter in that position at this point in their career, pay them. Because a couple of things. Number one, certainly it's goodwill. But also, you retain their services and you let them age out of the possibility of going anywhere else. I don't think enough gets made out of that sometimes. Like, if Diego Sanchez goes to Bellator, let's say, Do they take over as the number one promotion in the world? No, certainly not. But you are giving them a little bit of a freebie there. I mean, there's what would you pay? You got to look at it this way. Take Diego Sanchez's name out of it for a second. What would you pay if you knew that Bellator had some hot prospect that was going to direct eyeballs their way, and you had the ability to just buy him off of their promotion? Well, you'd probably do it. Okay, well, this is the opposite of that, but not really the opposite, which is we're not going to lend that to you. There's an added value to just keeping him off of anybody else's docket. And I thought the UFC was very smart originally when they did that with Chuck Liddell, Matt Hughes, Forrest Griffin. And the problem was that when the new ownership came along, they were like, why aren't we paying these?
Here?
When's the last time this guy fought? And we're paying him? And then you saw what happened with, Chuck fighting Tito again and stuff like that. So I'm always on the side of avoiding things like that when it comes to legendary, lifelong company fighters like that. I agree completely.
I'll give you one more name, and then we'll take a quick break. Okay. If you guys want to chime in, don't forget, you can always call us 877-344-4893. Luke Rockhold. Mm-hmm. What do you do there?
Okay, so the thing with Luke is, and Dana brought this up in the press conference, Luke Rockhold has a legitimate modeling career, and his looks don't seem to be fading as fast as his division ranking in the UFC. Mm-hmm. So he has a legit career with that, and that depends on your good looks, and he's got a lot of those. So there is really something to be said for that, combined with the fact that, according to Dana, this was the second time that he broke his jaw. He's also in a bit of a flux. It's not like he was climbing up the middleweight ranks back to a title shot, and then this happened. He moved up in weight. He's experimenting with light heavyweight. He hasn't been all that active, since his title reign. So I think in his case, you got to look at it from his standpoint and go, okay, what's the best case scenario of where this could go from here? Could I win some more fights and maybe lose a few more fights? Yeah. But I just tried my luck at light heavyweight. Did that have me knocking on the door of contending for light heavyweight top 5? No. So do I go back down to middleweight? That whole influx thing, I think that kind of thing can really lend itself toward the possibility of looking at it and going, you know what, I can make just as much, if not more money doing something else where I don't get hit in the head for a living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he gets paid to do that stuff, but if you look at like some of the top people that do it, mm-hmm. and you just chop it into a little percentage, that would probably be just as much as what he makes fighting.
Yeah.
The thing about the shot that he took, it was a bad shot, but he was fighting fairly well up until that moment. I think when he goes back and watches, he's gonna hate himself because he was doing well with the striking, and then he chose to wrestle, and that might have given his opponent that opportunity to throw that punch. Which, by the way, that punch, I just feel like anybody else, not everybody, but a lot of other fighters would have been KO'd by that punch because it was right on the button.
Oh yeah,
it was a horrific punch. So I don't know that you can go back and say, well, I think you could say his chin's going away a little bit, but I don't know that you could say he's chinny because I feel like that's a shot that would have annihilated most everyone else in that division. Mm-hmm. So it's really tough. Yeah, it just depends on what that hunger's like within him. But if I'm going to cast a vote, maybe this might be one where you say continue your career and you can maybe do it for one more fight here, but if you don't have it in that fight, you're going to have to go somewhere else.
You know what's so tough? I'm just looking at his record. I mean, I was right about the inactivity part. 'Cause basically, he's fought once a year since 2015 was the last time he fought more than once.
He's had a lot of injuries.
He has. But you know what's tough about this? When you look at it, yeah, he before this fight, he lost to Yoel Romero. But then you start looking at all the fights he won and against the people that he won him against, I mean, he had a nice career at middleweight, contending for a good chunk of time. But I think I stand by what I said. I think it's, you got to look at that and go, yeah, but you know what? You're, what is he, 35 years old? Mm-hmm. And when you're getting into your, no, he's 34. He'll be 35 in October. When you're that age and the reign that I'm talking about was, 3 years removed, That's a lot of time.
I hear you. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll continue on this topic. We still have a few more fighters we want to talk about. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM, Fight Nation Channel 156. We will be right back.
An excitement in your Vitamix. Add ice, and you get MMA Junkie Radio.
Quick reminder, I am Goes. That's Richard Hunter. He's filling in for Gorgeous George today. We will have Randy Couture coming up here in about 8 minutes. But until then, we're going to continue this retirement talk. By the way, do you like that song?
I do.
So Kelly's stock is still pretty high?
Yeah, that's some Slayer.
Yeah.
I told her during the break I'm wearing a George Jones t-shirt and a pair of Slayer socks. So
I like it. All right, here's another name for you, Richard Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Gilbert Melendez.
Yeah, I think, I expected this to come up in the post-fight press conference, and I think there were just so many other stories coming out of there that took place later in the card that we didn't get around to asking the question when Dana was out there in front of us. But I think we've seen the last of Gilbert Melendez in the UFC.
Think so?
Yeah, and he would probably be able to go fight elsewhere, but judging from what he was saying today, I don't think he's wanting to do that right at this moment, and that's probably the better call.
Well, he did release a post. I would read it to you, but it's super long.
Mm-hmm.
He said everything but the word retirement.
Yes.
So what it seems like is he's just going to take some time to reevaluate things. He still has that hunger, but he realizes that things just aren't clicking for him right now. What I would do in this situation, two things. One, you have to remember, Gilbert Melendez has a great relationship with Scott Coker, who he fought for under Strikeforce.
Yeah.
So it could very, very well be that he goes over to Bellator. But if you're the UFC and you can talk Diego into it, Why not have them run back that fight?
Ooh.
That was awesome.
That fight was awesome.
It was incredible. Now, Diego kind of likes 170, but he said a lot of things.
Yeah.
I don't like being the nightmare. I'm the dream. I don't like the dream. I'm the nightmare. So I wouldn't be shocked if he said, all right, I'll give 155 another chance, and Gilbert go up too. Meet at 155 and have a rematch.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a loser leaves town, but kind of that feel a little bit.
Yeah.
I would be into that fight. Would you?
I would 100% be into that fight. That fight, I mean, they just put the Clay Guida, Diego Sanchez fight in the Hall of Fame. That Gilbert Melendez, Diego Sanchez fight to me is right there with it.
I actually liked it better.
I think I probably did too. Yeah.
I was shocked that they usually in other sports you wait till everybody retires to even talk Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they would wait till Diego retired to pick one of his fights, because when it's so early in a Hall of Fame, you don't want to do a repeat, right? And here we are. Like, a lot of people probably would sit there and go, well, what about Diego and Gilbert?
Yeah.
And I could see them sit in the room and go, well, we just did Diego. Let's wait a couple years, right? What if his next fight is even better? I thought it was weird that they picked somebody that was still active to put their fight in.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see that rematch, and I would be down with it. Maybe not loser leaves town, but something similar to that. Holly Holm.
Yeah, I think Holly Holmes stays and fights.
I think so, too. I thought that was a little premature.
Yeah, I think it is, too, because, you got to remember, too, this is also somebody who can go between 135 and 145. And 145 is still, I mean, I know Amanda's got the title, but after that, it's anybody's game. I mean, Chris Cyborg saying she's going to test free agency. We don't even have her recommitted to a long-term deal with the UFC. And there's just not that many girls in that division. I'm not saying Holly is naturally as big as some of them. I'm just saying when you've got the ability to go back and forth, even though she is probably the more natural bantamweight and obviously a former champion in that division, I think that gives you a lot of moving room as well. I just haven't seen enough defeat with Holly Holm to make me think that, okay, well, now she really needs to think about, I think it may have been more, I know, like, she's had big changes in her personal life and stuff like that certainly over this last fight, but she's still with Jackson Winklejohn. She's still, I just don't see anything that tells me, no, she's older. So it's, again, we're not talking about maybe even a 5-year plan here, but let's revisit this next year with her.
Take a look at her losses.
Yes.
Okay. The first one came to Miesha Tate.
Mm-hmm.
No shame in that.
No.
Miesha Tate's going to be a future Hall of Famer. Valentina Shevchenko, she's kind of going that route as well.
Mm-hmm.
Jermaine Dibrandami, great fighter. Solid loss, I guess. Chris Cyborg, you can argue that. Amanda Nunes. That's Murderer's Row.
Yeah.
It'd be tough for anybody at a high level to kind of get through that gauntlet with, I think, even a 500, you'd be like, I think I did pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that we can look at it and just go, oh, she's off. But what the UFC does have to do is figure out what they want to do with her. And when I say that, I mean, you can't just keep feeding her to monsters like that over and over. If you want to try and rebuild her a little bit, you're going to have to take your time with that and really figure out what you want to do there. But I'll tell you what, we're coming up close here on Randy Couture, so let's take our second break. We will be right back on MMA Junkie Radio here on Fight Nation Channel 156.
Here, the boys are just getting warmed up. Now the real show begins. Take it away, boys.
SiriusXM takes you to the All England Club for point-by-point coverage of Wimbledon. Hear the best tennis players in the world vie for the sport's most cherished title. Coverage starts each morning at 4 Eastern on Sirius 138, XM 207, and streaming on your phone and at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers.
Boy, listen to Kelly coming through for me on that Races On.
Do you like that?
Mm-hmm.
Is she at the top of your standings right now, producer standings?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when we thought of the bit Combat Name That Tune on this show. It was I think it might have been your idea, your brainchild, that Frank and I adapted for the live stage, where I have to name a tune before he can submit me. Yeah.
That was awesome.
That's a staple of our live shows now.
How long can you last with Frank, by the way?
Well, it's seconds. I mean, there's a very narrow window of opportunity. Now, the good news is usually I can name the song in like 2 seconds. So it takes him sometimes that long to like swing his big old leg up over my head or something like that. But once it's in, it's real quick. I mean, there's a couple times where I named the song. I
forgot about this.
Yeah, there's a couple times where I named the song, but the lights were going out. You know what I mean? Like it was getting dim in the room. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Can we do this one day? Like at a junkie gathering or something?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, we'll do an exhibition for you guys.
That'd be good.
Yeah. The best part is when he has to disarm before we do it and the guns and knives start coming out everywhere.
Oh, man, I have a story about that. I don't know if I could tell it. He wouldn't get mad, would he?
Oh, Frank, no.
All right. I won't name the fighter.
Okay.
But a fighter told me, this is like 10 years ago, okay? A fighter told me that he was rolling with Frank one time. And it wasn't even at the beginning of it. He said it was like halfway through, so they had been doing it for like 10 minutes. And he just felt something like hit the mat. You know, like he heard something, like if you were to drop a book or something, right? You would feel that. And he looked down, and he said it was a knife the size of like what Rambo had. Mm-hmm. And he said it just hit the ground like he had it in his shorts the whole time.
I believe that.
You believe that?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't believe it at first until I kind of got to know Frank a little bit more, and then I was like, I think I could see that happen.
It makes me uncomfortable to hug him because I know he isn't just happy to see me. You know what I mean? Like I know what that feeling is up against me. And I'll tell you where it's really a hassle is if you're going to, like I've taken him to shows at House of Blues here before. Yeah. And I'm like, please, before you get out of the car, like just everything in the car. Because otherwise they do the metal detectors and everything. And it's worse than like your girlfriend with her big giant purse that they have to go through.
Nothing's worse than that.
I would take...
That's a black hole. I don't know how they fit all that stuff in there.
I know, but I would take that over this and a metal detector anytime.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard our thoughts on what we think about these fighters and whether we believe they need to retire, go somewhere else, get another fight. Let's run a little audio on Dana White, and we'll hear what he says. Why don't we go with Dana 3? This is Dana talking about Luke Rockhold here.
I think Luke Rockhold should talk about hanging it up. You know, he broke his jaw tonight. So that's a second broken jaw. He's been knocked out viciously a few times here. Shin is all banged up. He had to have skin graft and all kinds of stuff. He's had a good career. He's been a great fighter. I'd like to see him hang it up.
How much of that do you dispute? On my end, I feel like he said pretty much what a lot of people were thinking. But I feel like, how much of this, Richard, do you think has to do with the amount that these fighters get paid? By the time they get to a point like a Luke Rockhold, a Diego Sanchez, they're getting paid quite a bit.
Yeah.
How much of this do you think has to go with, man, he was a great fighter, but he's not as good anymore, but we're still paying him that great fighter money?
Well, that's certainly taken into consideration. I think another thing that's taken into consideration, too, and I don't know if it's consciously that Dana is this candid or maybe subconsciously, but I think there's also in moments like that a little bit of a tell as to what the promoter's expectation for this fighter is moving forward. He's not saying, oh, he's got no business in there. You know, and you've heard him say that sometimes too. I mean, if it's just a total working over, and you're like, man, I was afraid that guy wasn't going to survive that fight. You've heard Dana talk about, like, that guy should never fight again. On occasion, you've heard him be that severe about it. I think this is more just kind of reading between the lines of, like, maybe he's kind of telling you what his relative expectations are for that fighter moving forward. And while he could still fight, it sounds like that said promoter is not expecting him to be contending for a title anytime soon.
Yeah. Here's Dana White on Diego Sanchez retiring.
This is one of those conversations where, Diego's not getting viciously knocked out and everything else, but fighting is a young man's game. It's for young people, man. It's once you start to get older, Father Time is undefeated. He kicks all of our asses, and especially professional athletes. I care about the kid. I love the kid. So, we need to have a serious conversation about what's next.
When he says serious conversation, to me that implies he's leaning more on the side of you're going to have to step down. Diego's a charmer. The things he says. There's been times where we've had him in studio and I've actually picked on his side just because of things he said. And it's worked out for me sometimes. I don't know that, from hearing Dana White, I don't know that Diego has that used car salesman ability to change his mind right now.
When I think of, and I know that's not what you meant by this, but when I think of used car salesman, I think of that British guy that was Rampage Jackson's coach, that every time Rampage would be in a pay-per-view, the guy would swear up and down that Rampage was in the shape of his life. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah.
Every time in the Countdown show. But can't even think of what that guy's name was now. He was one of the Wolf guys. Yeah. But with Diego, I like your idea of, all right, we're not talking about title contention here, but Gilbert Melendez type fight? Hell, Clay Guida. I mean, there's fights you can make that are solid fights that you could put on a pay-per-view card. Hell, you could have them be a co-main probably of like a ESPN Plus card or a Fight Night card or something like that. Not forever, but for now. Yeah. So I'm kind of more in that camp with Diego. I really like that Gilbert Melendez idea.
I think that would be a lot of fun. Let's try, this is Dana White on Holly Holm.
Listen, I don't want to start going retirement crazy in here, but, she's had an amazing career. She is one of the sweetest human beings you can ever meet. And if you follow her on Instagram, she trains like a beast. She's almost 40 years old, and she's in ridiculous shape. The things that this woman can do physically with, like, the rings and, gymnastics and all that stuff is phenomenal. She's an incredible athlete. She's an incredible human being. I don't know. I think that she needs to take a look at, what's next for her and what she thinks. I'm just saying that because I care about her. I care about her as a person. She's amazing. So, I don't know. It's something we should probably talk about.
It's just so hard in her case because who hasn't really looked that way against Amanda Nunes? It's so tough to evaluate her.
Yeah, we were just talking in the break. I didn't get a chance to say this before in the last segment, but I think one of the things that's tough about her record is that she's won 2 of her last 7. Now, you ran down the opponents, and you're right, they are a murderer's row. But I think just numerically, that's tough to see. 2 of the last 7, But, when you're talking about they have to decide what to do with her, I think I would talk to her about, hey, what do you think about really making a commitment to featherweight?
Yeah,
because
they need bodies.
They need bodies, and I'll tell you what they damn sure need is a name fighter up there besides the champ. And we don't know what's happening with Chris Cyborg right now.
If you're part of Holly Holm's team, would you consider a camp change? Now, I know here in town there's been gyms where they've actually sent their fighters to another camp. Not parting ways with them, but just saying, hey, get a fight over here and just get a different look. Training partners, see if that helps. You're always welcome to come back. With Greg Jackson, I mean, she's been with him for a long time. But do you think something like that could help her out?
I would say no. No in her case, and here's why. She walked into that gym planning to sign up for cardio kickboxing or something like that, right? I mean, like, this is not like somebody trained for a while in martial arts or even had an amateur career and then they decided maybe they could go pro and then they got on with the camp and they've had every one of their pro fights with that camp. I mean, this is like I was driving by and I saw your sign about 30 days free, So I think in her case, especially with some, that upheaval in her personal life with her, getting divorced and all that kind of stuff, I could see where that's actually a big help to her right now is just having that familiarity, the family. She's obviously a fighter, I think, kind of unlike the complaints that Diego Sanchez had recently about there. I think she's a fighter that they still very much prioritize, or at least it appears that way. So in her, I know what you're saying, but in her particular case, I would say no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they keep her around. I'm almost positive they're going to keep her around. I think of the 4 people we mentioned, she probably has the better chance of staying, just for the sheer fact that they do need bodies.
Yeah.
But all 4 of these fighters seem like fighters that could have life somewhere else. I think if they went to another promotion, they would do just fine there.
Certainly could.
So I don't think it'll be the end of seeing any of the 4, but it may be the end of seeing some of them in the UFC. We talked yesterday about the top 3 fights. We did kind of skip over a little bit. Well, there was just so much to unpack, and Jorge Masvidal popped up here. Did you listen to that, by the way?
I did not hear yesterday. No, I apologize.
It was a lot of fun. Jorge Masvidal is a character, man. He really just tells you what is on his mind, and there are no filters with that guy. We had a blast with him. Jan Blachowicz defeated Luke Rockhold. We talked about this a little bit. Luke looked pretty good, I thought, up until that moment. I was a little confused when he did try it. Well, not when he tried to wrestle, but when it didn't work, he just had this commitment to it, and he was doing fairly well before that. So I was you were in press row, right?
Yeah.
Or not press row, but you were the eye in the sky.
Yes.
Was that you?
I was in the Alan Parsons project.
What'd you think of that fight?
Oh no, very compelling. In fact, I thought that coming out of the first round, I was impressed that he got up and went back to his corner after the end of the first round. So yeah, I mean, I know we were just talking about whether or not Luke Rockhold should retire, but I mean, in terms of an entertaining fight, and especially a stellar effort from Jan Blachowicz. I did get to ask him a few questions in the post-fight press conference, and he talked about how that basically for him went exactly according to plan. I mean, I think that was a very big win for him.
I was really happy that you asked those questions.
Oh, thanks.
Because I felt like coming out of that fight, everybody was focused on Luke Rockhold and what's next for him.
Yeah.
And very quietly, if you look at what Jan Blachowicz has done, he needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, I think
we had him in studio, and he was a very charismatic guy, a lot of fun to interview. But sometimes you need that push, to go along with what you've done in the cage, what you have on your resume on paper. You need a little bit of that push, and I hope the UFC can get behind him because he's a lot of fun, man. He's a great fighter. So I was glad that you asked him those questions. Yep. Michael Chiesa defeats Diego Sanchez. Fun fight. They were all over the place. It was this type of fight where you can't get up and use the restroom or grab a bag of chips or a Coke or whatever. You had to be focused the whole time because they did not stop. There was not a break in that entire fight. What'd you think?
Yeah, I as impressed as I was with Diego's will, and of course that's what we came out of the gate talking about. I really think you got to give a whole lot of credit to Michael Chiesa because, I mean, when you see that kind of dominance, I mean, all 3 judges gave him 1 10-8 round on the way to a unanimous decision victory, a complete shutout on his part. I thought he just looked fantastic. And so, I like what I'm seeing of Chiesa at 170 and, definitely big things ahead for him.
The only thing that sucks about it is I loved his performance, but it's still, for me, it's still kind of hard to gauge exactly what his 170 run is going to be like. Because Diego's not really what you think of when you think of a typical 170er.
That's true.
And we've seen Diego as low as 145. So, I don't know. When you get some of these bigger dudes in front of him, I just don't know if he's going to be able to manhandle him the way he did Diego Sanchez.
And that's what's coming.
But
that's where we're headed.
So?
Well, we got to test it. That's what I'm saying. Is that's the next hurdle. Yeah.
It was kind of like with Benson Henderson, right? When he would dabble at 170.
Yeah.
Well, he did okay, but we still don't know what he's going to look like when you just get one of the bigger 170ers. But Chiesa did basically everything you would want. I mean, if you were to draw it on paper and tell him this is the way it played out, I'd probably say, yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I went out there. Diego's very hard to finish into submissions, but he had him in some precarious situations. And granted, Diego had his moments too, but we all felt like Diego had improved his game a little bit. So I thought it was a good run. Why don't we do this? Let's take our last break, and when we come up, we'll wrap up UFC 239. We'll put the little bow on it that it deserves. You are listening to MMA Junkie Radio here on SiriusXM's Fight Nation, Channel 156.
Media. Instagram. Snapchat. The same applies to the biggest stories in MMA. Time for MMA Junkie Radio's Daily Debate.
Ready for today's Daily Debate?
Memory foam. Waterbed, dummy.
Yeah. We One day I'll play the outtakes of that for you.
Oh, yeah. There's more. I would like to hear that.
Missed out on that.
Yeah.
Joining us for today's Daily Debate is Richard Hunter from Phone Booth Fighting. Here is the question for Junkie Nation. If Jon Jones' next title defense is at 205, who should he face? Here are your choices. Corey Anderson, Jan Blachowicz, a Thiago Santos rematch, or Johnny Walker? You first.
All right. I think that Thiago Santos gave a great account of himself. A lot of people talked about Jon Jones might have been fighting cautiously, but I think Thiago Santos was making Jon Jones fight cautiously. I think that was smart of Jon Jones. I think Thiago Santos could pose a very good challenge in a rematch to Jon Jones. So I'm tempted for that. I'm interested in that ahead of Corey Anderson and even Jan Blachowicz at this point. However, I believe I'm going to go ahead and select old Johnny Walker.
You're crazy. Oh. I'll
Johnny
tell you
Walker,
what.
dummy.
I'm going to give you my answer, and I don't even know what it is yet. I'm just going to start talking, okay? Corey Anderson, 3 straight.
Yeah.
Okay, I can buy into that.
Yeah.
But how many times have you seen the UFC operate off of the what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm.
And some time has passed, okay? You see what Jan Blachowicz did. That's impressive, and it's all fresh in everybody's mind, right? But I don't know if it's the sexiest matchup on that list.
Yeah.
Johnny Walker, he's a young guy, maybe too soon, but I could see him doing a lot of the things that Santos did.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Thiago Santos rematch, well, I think we would all agree that that could probably be next had Jon Jones not come out and said, I want to fight ASAP, get in a lot of fights this year, and the injuries that happened to Santos, I mean, that's something that's going to put him out for quite a bit. And if you come back from an injury like that, do you really want to see Jon Jones, an angry Jon Jones in front of you? Probably want to take a fight before that.
Yeah.
So this puts me in a pickle. My heart wants Johnny Walker. I think that would be a fun fight. I think it'd be exciting. It'd look great on a poster.
Yeah.
It'd be great build-up. The martial artist inside of me says Corey Anderson, he deserves it.
Mm.
But I look at how the UFC does things. What have you done for me lately? And I think it's a two-headed race between Corey Anderson and Jan Blachowicz. And I'm not going to select Jan Blachowicz. I'm actually going to go with Corey Anderson. I think that's what they're going to do.
All right.
Plus, I want to be contrarian to you.
I'll tell you just one more point in support of Johnny Walker. You're talking about a fighter undefeated thus far in the UFC and 3 first-round knockouts. Think about how that's going to sound on the countdown promos when you're trying to explain to the person you want to buy the pay-per-view who Johnny Walker is. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge that any of the 4 of those people you mentioned are going to face. How are we going to explain to the buyer, the casual buyer, who this person is that's fighting Jon Jones? And I think you've got a little bullet point there with Johnny Walker that
yeah, I can see that.
Let
me tell you how Junkie Nation has this.
Okay.
The voting's still going on, but as of right now, over 2,000 votes, 16% goes to Corey Anderson, 29% goes to Jan Blachowicz, 29% to the Thiago Santos rematch, 26% to Johnny Walker. Ooh. The voting hasn't ended.
Yeah.
We have a tie up at the top.
Would you say 29 to 26%?
29, 29, and 26.
Oh, wait.
There's a tie between Santos and Blachowicz right now.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So if you haven't voted, get on there and vote.
Yeah.
There you have it. That's
very
today's
close.
Daily Debate. I really wanted to say Johnny Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they'll do it. You think they'll do it? I know that was your answer, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think medical reasons are going to keep them from considering a Thiago Santos. If we get that rematch, it'll be down the line like we did with Alexander Gustafsson. Mm-hmm. So, maybe... They could maybe do it with Corey Anderson. I hate to... I mean, no disrespect to Corey Anderson as a fighter. I'm just talking about the marketability.
You're about to disrespect him, huh?
No, I am not. I'm just talking about the marketability aspect of that. But you know what? Honestly, it's tough with any of them. It's not like any of those guys are, boy, people have been waiting. Wait till we put this poster up. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to go, who's that guy with Jon Jones? I mean, again, the casual observer, that's what they're going to think.
Everybody wants to see a poster with Jon Jones on it that says heavyweight underneath it, I think. That's what everybody wants. Had we put up that poll, it'd probably been one-sided towards that. But I don't know that – I hear him say it, but I don't know that he's that excited to do it.
Oh, I don't think he particularly is either.
There's some beasts up there.
Yes.
I think he can be successful, but I don't know that he can dominate fighters the way he does at 205, although the last performance wasn't that dominating.
I think Jon Jones is still accomplishing a goal of getting on a good pace of fighting regularly and avoiding any problems. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that long ago that he didn't.
Poster said wanted.
He didn't fight on. Right. Yeah, those posters were being reprinted and the old ones were being used as gift wrap at Dana White's Christmas party.
We're going to take our top of the hour break, and we will come back and we'll discuss this a little further because you're making some good points. It's MMA Junkie Radio on Fight Nation, Channel 156. We'll be right back.
In your Vitamix, add ice, and you get MMA Junkie Radio.
It's fantasy football season, and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio is helping you win. Listen to the best fantasy football analysis for player rankings, draft strategy, and everything you need to draft a championship team. Get the edge and start preparing for your draft now with Fantasy Sports Radio. Sirius 210, XM87, streaming on your phone and at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers. I'm looking at Richard Hunter right now, and I'm trying to gauge him. I see no toes tapping. Mm-hmm. I see no finger taps on the table. Mm-hmm. I see no head bob. What happened?
No, we're good. I think she just went. She's like, all right, heavy worked once. Let's do it again. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
All of them. You're giving her. You'd be the best teacher ever.
My strategy was to not necessarily pick a band or a group that I knew of, because I've heard of Slayer before, but something similar to maybe expose you to something new that you'd like.
Okay.
That make you feel better?
Yeah.
Kind of made me feel better.
Yeah.
I thought about it.
Yeah. I just like that there's any thought being put into it. That's refreshing.
She could have just said, this is what I like. Take that, dummies, right?
Yeah.
I like to make my host happy.
So get this. You guys think you're so cute over there producing. Like, you guys know the in and outs of everything that we say, everything we do. But we know a lot about you guys. And you guys have your go-to songs. Josh, anything Metallica.
Sure.
Gabby has like 2 songs that she likes to come back to. I think those are her like I'm on TMZ and oh my god, wait, we're coming back. And then she hits those 2 songs. The wild card in this is Andre. Andre just does
Andre
whatever.
is a wild card.
Yeah. So
He's
we
got
know a little
broad
bit about
music
you
too.
guys too. He shockingly does. Wrapping up really quick on Jon Jones. Do you feel like Jon Jones has hit that peak yet? Is he still gonna get better, or is this kind of the ceiling for Jon Jones? Because he's looked a little vulnerable here and there. What he did to Gustafsson in that second fight was pretty remarkable, considering a lot of people thought he may have lost that first fight. We all thought that Gustafsson was a guy that maybe exposed something. He came around and just fixed every hole. But has he reached that ceiling yet?
I think it depends on when and if he ever goes to heavyweight. I think maybe he has, if, as crazy as it is to say that the best light heavyweight of all time has peaked, he is just doing the same great things at light heavyweight repeatedly and occasionally running into somewhat of a qualified challenge. So maybe so in that regard. But if he were able to transition up to another division and contend, if not maybe even at some point hold a title, then that would be a whole nother new chapter.
Do you think a 100% Thiago Santos would have beat him that night?
I don't. Listen, at the risk of Dana White telling me that I should never judge another fight again, I'm not so sure that Thiago Santos didn't beat him. I had it. I'll tell you this.
I had it for him too.
Yeah, I had it 48-47.
Yep.
And I mean, I had no problem with. Look, the fight was razor close. It had a lot to do with, one, how you perceive a fighter on the perimeter actually being able to score that for a fighter when a guy has his back to the cage like that for basically the whole fight. I thought what hurt Thiago Santos optically is that when you get hurt like that, when you get injured, especially in the first round of a fight, and so for the next 4 rounds, you're throwing kicks where if you miss, you wobble weird when you try to plant on your leg and all that, you fall. I could see where judges would be like, was he down? Was that a slip? Was that a,
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And so I think it wasn't pretty. And I think sometimes when it has to be sloppy like that, that can hurt you in the eyes of judges. So, yeah, I mean, I think a 100% Thiago Santos has a good chance against Jon Jones, and that's why I think there's a very compelling rematch to be made, because the only other person we've ever said that about is Alexander Gustafsson, and that rematch was very much warranted.
Did you feel like it was more of an off night for Jon Jones, which is what he was claiming against Alexander Gustafsson the first time, or do you feel like he just really kind of met his match that night?
Well, I don't think it was an off night in the same way. I mean, according to everybody that I know of, including Jon Jones himself, his mindset with the first time he fought Alexander Gustafsson was on pretty much anything but that fight. He had a whole lot going on in his personal life. And if he is to be believed that a lot of that's, or all of it's been cleaned up now, then that tells me it's not really comparable. I think it's only comparable in the sense that both of those guys had a better chance than anybody else, at least that first time, of beating him. And I think this time he may have seen that enough to know, okay, I can beat this guy and I can win a close fight, but I've got to do it a certain way. And he said this in the press conference. To his credit, I give him credit for saying this, because he was asked, well, when you heard the fans booing, maybe for kind of a lack of action, did it ever occur to you to kind of pull the trigger and try to press forward? And he said, very few people know what it's like to be in there. I mean, you're one bad shot away from, being put out and risking brain damage. So I think he knew that he had a path, albeit a narrow path, to win that close fight, and he took the more reliable route.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like it's really difficult when you're watching these things live. Like, we were doing a Sportscaster Companion that night, so we're calling the fights. And I don't know if, like, a little hater in me came out, or even that little person that says, oh, my God, we're going to see an upset, and you just start leaning a certain way. But I looked on Twitter, and it seemed like a lot of people had it for Santos, and a lot of people had it for Jones. I know that I felt that night, if you would have told me you had it for Jones, I wouldn't have thought you were crazy. And I probably need to go back and watch it one more time. But what I felt like wasn't so much that Thiago won that fight because of his performance. I thought it was a little bit of that, but a little bit of a lack of performance from Jon. Like, Jon was just sitting back, and I don't know if in his head he just thought he was really ahead, or if he was really bothered by the leg kicks, because you saw how he got out of the cage. He was limping. I mean, he had to practically be carried out of there.
I could stand to see that fight again, and to be fair, sometimes from that perspective, once I watch it from the television perspective, things can look a little different to me. Mm-hmm. So if I were to watch it, turn the commentary down, maybe I go the other way. But I can't imagine not seeing it 48-47. I mean, obviously there's a commonality there that a whole lot of people saw that fight to be a one-round difference, and it came down to, I think, in my opinion, the second round of which way you went on that.
What John did
By the way,
say,
your fighter name should absolutely be Little Hater.
Little Hater?
That was a good one.
Yeah, I like that.
Because a little hater came out in you.
What he did say that night, Jon Jones, that I completely agreed with, was he said, Thiago Santos fought the type of fight that a lot of people have said they're going to fight against me. And it worked. Mm. And I agree. How many times did people say, chop them legs, like really cut his movement? And he is one of the first guys that sat there and did that, and it bothered Jon. The problem with that is Jon is pretty good at making adjustments from one fight to another, and I think that is something that he would shore up. And I just hope that the second fight isn't kind of like Gustafsson Jones 2, where it was just night and day.
Yeah.
Could be, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, so we got through the main card, and we're wrapping up what happened in the cage that night. But on the same topic of the fight card, a little bit of that fallout. Ben Askren, Jorge Masvidal. We didn't get your take yesterday. You weren't here. Do you have anything to say about the fight?
Well, the fight itself was, you've got one element of the fight to talk about, which is now the fastest finish in UFC history. You've got a game plan that apparently, I had seen that Dustin Poirier had tweeted after the fight that he had been told the night before at dinner that this was going to be the plan, and he saw a film on Mike Brown's phone of them practicing it, and I asked Jorge about that at the press conference. He confirmed that. So, masterstroke by them. I think the only thing to really say about it is, first of all, in the case of Ben Askren, listen, I don't think Ben Askren should be going anywhere. I mean, this is a guy who's undefeated, who got KO'd, yes, by a master stroke, but also so quickly. There was nothing exposed about Ben Askren in that. He's a wrestler, and he shot in. I mean, there's, as long as he's okay neurologically and all that, we've got plenty left to see out of Ben Askren. So he doesn't need to be going anywhere if anybody's talking about something like that. I think the only thing to really maybe talk about out of all that, and I apologize for not hearing the show yesterday, so I don't know if it came up or not, but, everybody's talking about that press conference with Jorge Masvidal after, and how it was gold, and he told it like it is, and all this kind of stuff, and he certainly did do all that. But the post-fight antics, even more so than when Askren is out cold, getting down and beating the canvas, saying whatever he said to him, the thing about falling over like you're dead and laying there stiff as a board next to him, maybe I'm old school, but I know some other people who are as well, like my podcast partner. I don't know if you saw his tweet about that. He was hot as hell about that.
He's a Masvidal fan, right?
Yes, and they both have been represented by the same representation. They both have Cuban lineage. But Frank was, he was like, that's the most disrespectful thing, one of the most disrespectful things I've ever seen. And I think where we get a little carried away with that in terms of because I saw so much, listen, he got a lot of backlash for it. I saw so many people saying, well, Masvidal said stuff, though. You deserve that. There's consequences. No, consequences are like in the judicial system. When you commit a crime, there's sometimes this idea that, well, someone said some words and therefore I was unable to control myself in a way that's to be expected. I think that's a bridge too far. And I think that the thing, because Askren sits up and he's doing an interview with Ariel Helwani the next day, maybe we're not thinking about it so much, but it's not like he was even semi-conscious and the fight was just stopped. He was out. He might have been dead. Do you know what I mean? And boy, would we probably be singing a different tune if there was footage, if he's still in a coma right now, and there's footage of a guy laying down next to him pretending to be in the coma too. Do you see what I'm saying? So
I agree, and I disagree.
All right.
I'll give you my take on it. I agree that if that were mixed martial artist goes, I wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of guys wouldn't have done it. I think everything Ben Askren said, all the things he did, everybody takes things differently. Now, what I will say is, if you ask me, was it a good thing to do? Absolutely not. But when you do the things Ben does, or Colby Covington, or Conor McGregor, all I'm going to say is just don't be surprised by anything when somebody does do it. I'm not saying it was right, but it shouldn't. When he wakes up and they show him the tape, he shouldn't be shocked. Like, I can't believe he did that. Once you cross certain lines, nothing should shock you. So, like, the whole thing with Conor McGregor, like that, I don't know if he knows this, but this is something that he needs to worry about for the rest of his life.
Well,
when he's at Whole Foods, whatever, because he's crossed certain lines with religion, with politics. Like, there are crazy people out there. So if somebody were to say today he got assaulted at Walmart, I wouldn't be shocked.
Well, he can worry. He needs to worry about if he's at Whole Foods in Uzbekistan, not here. Because listen, and I said this same thing. So this isn't just a Masvidal thing with me. I said this same thing about when
it shouldn't
Conor,
be that way.
But here's what I'm saying. When Khabib said about Conor, listen, you can't talk about these things. You can't talk about religion. Yes, you can. You 100% can do that. That is you can legally do that, and that is a protected right here. What I'm saying is this. All of these things, these lines that are crossed and these things that are said, you know what they all have in common? They're words. Right. They're words. No, there's no action attached to any of them. Now, I get, listen.
But there are consequences attached to them, right?
Yes, but we regulate those as a society. When if you pull a gun on me and I shoot you, and I say, well, it's self-defense because he pulled a gun on me. Yes, your action begat my reaction, and I'll get off on self-defense. However, if I shoot you and I say, well, did you check his Twitter? He called my girlfriend a whore. Guess who's going to jail?
No, I hear you.
Okay, so I just think sometimes.
But if I read that headline, I wouldn't be shocked because that's happened in America.
Yeah,
that's why I don't say certain things because I see what happens to other people for less. So the smart guy in me says, I'm going to turn the page, or I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to close my laptop or my phone. That's why I don't think Ben waking up would be shocked that happened. I'm not saying it's right, though.
But okay, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not. No, I'm not. I guess I'm not shocked that it happened. No, I wasn't looking at it going, well, my goodness, that is completely out of character.
I actually thought it was going to be worse.
Okay.
I really thought Jorge. There's times where the referee's still pulling on the fighter and they're still hitting. I was actually shocked that he pulled them off. I thought he was going to do a lot worse.
The thing is, somebody does that. That's the reason we have an athletic commission. I mean,
right? Yeah, there's consequences for it.
Yeah, I mean, he
would have lost his bonus.
These are not the things that draw me to martial arts, And I know that people go, oh, you keep it real, back to the Kimbo day. Yeah, but in the Kimbo days, they were knocking over barbecue grills in people's garages while they're. Do you remember that? You'd be like, man, I hope nobody steps on that rake. Oh my gosh, somebody stepped. I mean,
who's fighting Daffy Duck?
I don't know. I just think that
Leghorn?
I get. I'm not flummoxed as to how it happened, but I'm just saying that I see a whole lot of excitement for the moment. I think people who watch that stuff vicariously a lot of times get caught up in the moment, like they're watching an episode of Sons of Anarchy or something like that, and they're not really taking a step back and going, man, all these guys are operating in a world that's outside of the parameters of what we've all agreed to here, and again, it's I come back to the fact that it's words, and words are words, and you know what? If somebody says something about you that's not true, if I called your wife a prostitute and it turns out she's never had sex for money, don't kill me, sue me. Because I'm making a lot of money that night. You want to know how you'd look even like, how you'd screw him even more? If they attached his wages to the civil settlement that you got, because he said something like that, and then he ended up getting KO'd in 5 seconds, and you getting 2 paychecks.
All right, I'll tell you what. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to listen to some. You alluded to the Ariel Helwani interview.
Yeah.
We have some clips from that from Ben Askren talking about this whole thing. So when we come back, we'll listen to some of those. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM, Fight Nation 156.
Good, you're still here. The boys were just getting warmed up. Now the real show begins. Take it away, boys.
I get to listen to Jon Jones all day.
Yeah?
He's my favorite country singer.
Do you realize that everybody that's watching the broadcast, all they see, so your hands cover up his face, so they just see you with a T-shirt that says George.
That's right. Could be.
Which is kind of cool.
Could be George Garcia's face. They can't even see it.
Well, the thing is, people that have maybe never seen us before, that are tuning in for the first time, they're going, I never pictured that face with that voice.
Yeah.
They think you're George right now.
Yeah, those two don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
I thought they were related.
I think we should do a show where we all have our names on our T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun.
Like a game show.
Yeah. Like Studs. Remember Studs? Didn't they do that?
Yeah. It would be the saddest episode of Studs ever.
More like Duds. All right. So here are some clips. This is Ben Askren's response to what happened in the fight. And a little bit more on that. But we'll play the first clip. This is his reaction to the fight with Masvidal.
Saturday night was least traumatizing for me. There's a little part of my memory that's blank there, but man, I remember being in the cage with him. I don't really remember the flying knee, and then when I can recall, I remember everything. I was like, oh shit, I lost to George Masvidal. This freaking sucks. You know, and everyone else was more worried about me than I was worried about myself. And I didn't really have any pain of any sort. You know, not a headache. Nothing on my face hurts. And so it was just like, oh, Jesus. I lost to George Masvidal. How did I lose to him? You know, how fast was it? I could tell it was pretty fast because I wasn't like sweaty or sore or anything. So I knew it was fast. I didn't know exactly how fast it was. And apparently, I guess I set a record of some sort.
All right, so that Ben Askren there is kind of the Ben Askren we're all used to. He's never really spoken about a loss because he hasn't lost. But he's kind of just, no pun intended, he took it on the chin. He was kind of just joking about it a little bit. I thought it was cool that he actually did the interview. Mm-hmm. I think that maybe some of the people that didn't like him, he might have won over with coming out and doing that. Sometimes when you see these type of matchups where there's somebody that's a little vocal and they get a loss, they kind of just go away. And in his case, he actually answered the bell and took some shots. So what do you think of what he said?
Yeah, I don't think he could have been any more candid. I thought he gave all the credit where credit was due, but at the same time, I mean, he can't really apologize for his performance.
Right.
You know, I mean, even the fact that he was ducking in, he's a wrestler. Like, I mean, I get what Masvidal's plan was, but I also certainly get, I was assuming we were going to see a fair amount of wrestling from Ben Askren that night had the fight not ended in 5 seconds. So, I mean, there's a part of this that you really just can't analyze. You're like, well, that guy is, Masvidal has all the right in the world to crow about the victory. Askren is I think being pretty fair and candid about the way it went down, and that's about the end of that.
All you can do is talk about Jorge's decision to run out and throw the knee because it's risky. It doesn't work. You're getting a bad spot. You're right where he wants you. And Ben's decision to shoot. He's going to talk about that right here in clip number 2.
I was ready for knees, and I did say to Duke multiple times in the back room, I think he's going to try something crazy right away. If you remember the Till fight, obviously he ran across the ring and kicked Till in the balls in the first 4 seconds. And I had an inkling that he's going to try something right away. And I've kind of always thought, like, who the hell gets flying knee? Like, can't you see that coming? It's coming from so far away. But when I watched the film, I mean, I don't like George at all, but that was a damn good flying knee. He hit it fast and explosively. He got some serious airtime on it, and then obviously connected in the right spot. I've been in the cage 19 times, and that type of technique has worked 19 other times, and it's never failed me. And so now to the one time it fails me, to turn around and say, yeah, that's bad technique, that's not the way I should have done it, it was predictable. To say those things, obviously they would be correct, but it's also confirmation bias, and a lot of people fall for their own confirmation bias. And so I'm not going to fall for my own confirmation bias.
He's saying everything that, I mean, if I'm his coach in the background, like a PR coach, I wouldn't have much to say. Like, this dude's owning up to everything.
Especially in that clip. Because you know what he's doing? He is in no way saying, well, I messed up. He's not even doing the qualified, well, it was smart of my opponent to take advantage of a mistake or an opportunity. No, he's like, listen, I don't personally like the guy, but that was a fantastic flying knee. It's worked. What he's 19 other times, and this time it doesn't. So all credit to Masvidal. I guarantee you, nobody else was introducing confirmation bias into this conversation.
True.
He said it 3 times.
Let's play one more clip here. This is on his future in mixed martial arts. Can you play that one, Kelly?
Honestly, on the one side of me says, holy shit, like, how did I get knocked out in 5 seconds? I honestly, obviously, I haven't even thought of my path forward, Ariel. I had such a nice path set up. And I did it for myself. And George Masvidal was my pick. I went to London. I said I'm going to fight the winner until Masvidal. I got it. That was who I wanted to fight. And that was my path to a title, and I had created all this hype and all this momentum. And I was right where I wanted to be. I mean, I was right on the precipice of having that title shot against Usman if I go and win the fight on Saturday night. And now it's like I said, I enjoyed hanging out with my friends yesterday. I flew home this morning. I didn't really I haven't really thought about, hey, where am I? Where am I now? What's my path forward? Who am I going to fight next? I hadn't really thought of that because I was all in on the one thing happening, the other thing happened. So I guess I have to take some time to regroup. I'm assuming that I'll be suspended for. I didn't look at what my suspension is, but I'm assuming I'll be suspended for a significant amount of time. With not even any training due to the fact that I went unconscious. So I will have some time to plot my path forward.
Hey, look, the good news is if you're a Ben Askren fan, he's probably coming back. I want to see him in certain matchups that we didn't get to see him fight. So I'm glad he's going to stick around. I think he brings a little bit of an adrenaline shot into a UFC that sometimes when you're not getting your Conor McGregor antics or your Jon Jones stuff, sometimes it's nice to hear Ben Askren chirp up and make a matchup interesting. Are you happy sticking around?
Yes. Yeah, because listen, to me, what we, when with the Lawler fight, and you can argue whether or not the stoppage was good and all that kind of stuff. One thing we saw for sure is that Askren took some punishment for as long as that fight lasted. I mean, he had a toughness to him, at UFC level. So this whole idea of, well, who knows, you got a guy you've always talked about being in the promotion. What happens if he gets in there and then you put him against top talent and then he gets put? Well, that's off the table because at least in the fight against Lawler, and listen, we didn't see enough of this fight with Masvidal. I would be way more down on him if he had gotten his ass kicked for 3 minutes of the first round and then they stopped it. You know what I mean? As far as Askren goes. So.
All right, let's take this break, and when we come back, we may switch things around a little bit, but we're definitely coming back with a guest. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio here on Sirius. You say it.
XM, Channel 156, Fight Nation.
You got it.
Excellence and excitement in your Vitamix. Add ice, and you get MMA Junkie Radio.
All right, we're back. MMA Junkie Radio. This is Goes. That's Richard Hunter. I pointed at myself, so I didn't look like I was saying your Goes.
Yeah. No,
it sounded like that because you were looking there, like I was saying your Goes, but I'm Goes.
Yeah, appreciate you making the distinction.
Yeah, to clear that up. A lot of people confuse us all the time. We look
all the time.
Exactly alike, basically. But we had a little bit of a scheduling mix-up.
What?
Yeah. But it's all cleared up now, I believe. And Kelly will let us know when we have our next guest on. It's a guy that we've had in studio before. Chris Curtis is who I'm talking about. It's always fun talking to that guy, man. I love, and at the same time feel super old that I'm going through a period where some of the guys that when we first started the show are now retiring. And there's this new crop of fighter that's popping up. And Chris Curtis is that new crop of fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun to talk to them now.
That's interesting. There are interesting signposts like that. Mine was Dan Henderson. For ever and ever, Dan Henderson was I shouldn't say forever and ever, but certainly for a good number of years right there toward the end. Dan Henderson was the only fighter in the UFC who was older than me.
Really?
And not by much. And it was like I did not want him to retire for that reason because I realized there will be no one else coming along. Like that's something that's going to irreversibly change. The UFC is not going to sign any 50-year-olds. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Not happening.
I think the way things are structured now, it just feels like you get these kids that are starting MMA from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I think when we first started doing our gigs, it was like you had your strikers, your grapplers, and then they learned on the fly and became something else, became a complete mixed martial artist. Now you just have these kids that go into MMA classes at 14, 15 years old. They can't take their first fight until whatever it is in that state.
But it's all planned. Yeah. I mean, Randy Couture, I remember Randy one time telling me in an interview that when he first started, he would, they'd give you this paperwork to fill out before a fight, and you would just put down what your record is. And he'd say, well, some guy would write down, well, I've had 100 pit fights.
What?
Well, what's a pit fight? You know,
Tank Abbott?
He didn't say
he was
Tank
a pit fighter, right?
Yeah, he didn't say Tank was the guy doing it, but he just said, you would just see these sort of arbitrary statistics on there, and who was around to disagree with it at the time. You barely had an internet to look at,
Do you remember your first interview?
First fighter interview. Yeah. Okay. I can narrow it down. I can tell you the first real incident that happened. Yeah. And
that's even better.
It wasn't and this was very early on. It wasn't a bad one for me, but have you ever seen the famous footage of Chuck Liddell falling asleep on live television?
Yes.
Okay. That was in Dallas, where I'm from originally. And he left that TV station and was driven directly to my radio studio, which was less than 5 minutes away.
After?
Yes.
No way.
Yes. So I got him.
Dude, there's so many stories you've never told me.
So I got him in that condition. And he was there to promote that movie 300, if you remember that movie. What happened? Movie? Yeah, he's not in the movie. But what happened was the movie studio thought, hey, I'll bet the UFC crowd will like this movie, so let's hire a prominent UFC fighter to go around and he watch the movie at a screening and stuff like that, and then, promote the movie. So what that meant was he wasn't on like a UFC press junket. He wasn't with UFC PR. This little old lady came in who I knew, because she had brought around like old British actresses and stuff like that when it was Oscar time and they're doing media hits to campaign for nominations. That's what she was used to dealing with. Mm-hmm. And now she brings in, still drunk from the night before, mohawk with the tattoo on his head, Chuck Liddell, which was a lot more of a rare sight back then. And as far as the tattoo on the head. And I remember she brought him in, and we were in break. And we're coming, hey, Chuck, good to see you. We're going to be back in like 2 minutes. And he kind of like motions me, kind of pulls me over the side. And he goes, he's like, hey, just I'm not doing too well. He's just like,
This is before.
yeah, we're about to come back for break. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right. It's it's you can't tell exactly what was bit, but you could tell he's trying to give you some warning about something. So he gets on the mic, got through the interview, semi-okay, whatever. But as soon as we were done, headset came off. He walked into the men's room that was right next door to the studio, and through the studio door, which you know how radio studios are kind of supposed to be semi-soundproof and all that. Through the studio door, I could still hear all over the place.
Wow.
In the men's room.
Man.
And later on I found out, because I asked Dana about this in an interview not too long after that. Later on I found out about that Dana had heard about all this, and within like 20 minutes of that interview being done, I think sent the private jet to come get him. I know he called off like the rest of the 300 tour or whatever, press junket. But as I recall, it's been years, but him telling me that he's like, yeah, I saw that footage on television where he fell asleep, and as soon as he's like, we sent the plane and collected him.
That's crazy, dude. I've never heard that story.
Got a picture. I've got some pictures of it. They're funny pictures because I mean you can tell he's like he's fighting through it.
Oh my god, dude! And sometimes I get confused with the things we can talk about and the things we can't.
Yeah.
But there's been quite a few. Well, we should do a show, one show, on just that.
Okay.
Bring in like a big panel.
Yeah.
And just go through, because trust me, on our end we've had quite a few as well.
Yeah.
Kelly, let's do this. Why don't we take our last commercial break? We're playing the mess around here with our guests. One of them's ready, the other one isn't. It's kind of funny. One day I'll explain. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on SiriusXM Fight Nation Channel 156. We will be back with someone.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely
Take it away, boys.
I like when he tells us to take it away. The boys part, I don't know.
It's nicer than when he does that. Back to you, ladies.
We're back. It's MMA Junkie Radio, and we have a Hall of Famer on hold. He's waiting. He's Randy the Natural Couture. Let's bring him on. Mr. Couture. How you doing, bud?
What's up, fellas? How's it going?
Not too bad. Welcome to MMA Junkie Radio. You got Goes today. No George, but filling in for him is Richard Hunter. And let me tell you this, Randy. When I tell you what went down with this...
Just ask Goes, because Goes knows he's my favorite.
There you go. See? When I tell you what happened with this interview and why we're a little late to getting the phone call to you, you're going to punch George right in the grill. And when you punch him, I want to be there. I want to be there to put like a little bit of chalk on your knuckles, just so everything goes smoothly.
I like it.
Oh, man. But I'm happy we got him. And here's what we're going to do, Richard Hunter. We're going to talk a little PFL. We're excited. It's PFL Week 4 in Atlantic City, New Jersey on July 11th. And this is a good card, man. When you look at it top to bottom, a lot of big names on this card. We're really excited. Let's start off with that main event, Randy. Chris Curtis versus Magomed Karamov. Tell us a little bit of...
Magomed Karamov. I tell you what, I have been so impressed watching this guy. Obviously, he's coming off the championship of last year. We're calling him Mego Million now. That's his new nickname. The guy is so smooth and composed and controls distance so well. And then he's got a crazy, really good submission game. So he's definitely a threat. He's fun to watch. He's got his hands full with Curtis for sure, but who's a slugger and is going to come out and get in his face, which I'm excited to see. But it's going to be a great fight.
There aren't that many holes, really, when you look at the guy fight. I mean, he was tough last year, and he seems like he's still getting better. When you look at Chris Curtis, from his perspective, is this where he would want to fight a guy like this, having been through a season already, and see how this all plays out? Is he the type of guy that you would want to get early, or is it better to get him a little later?
I'm not sure there's a good time to get him, honestly. And right now it's about scoring points and getting into the postseason. And that's what Chris has to be looking at. So, we're in our second wave of regular season fights. Each one of these guys, some of them are on the bubble. I mean, they have to win these fights if they're going to progress to the postseason championships. So it becomes, the tension is definitely a little higher going into this next round of fights for all of these athletes, and that's no different for Chris. So he's definitely starting at the top of the chain, or the however you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. So you never know. I mean, any given night, anybody can be beat, and I'm not saying that Magomed's unbeatable. I think that somebody may have his number, and maybe it's Chris Curtis. That's what's going to be fun to see. But what I seen last year with Ray, when he fought Ray Cooper in the finals and just all the way through, he's just very, very composed, very typical Russian or Dagestani demeanor. You can't get him to say a cross word about anybody. And he just goes out there and stoically does his job, and it's very impressive.
Randy, you've been in the cage before, obviously. You've also been in the corner of fighters. How do you think you would have dealt as a competitor with a system like this where points do matter and you can be seated higher with finishes and the amount of time you do it in? Would that have been something that you would have liked as a fighter? And how much, like when guys like Richard and I are breaking things down, we're saying, go in there early, do this, do that. And sometimes we feel like our analysis, we're almost taking that fighter out of their game and out of just worrying about just winning itself. How do you think you would have dealt with all that?
We walk a fine line there, don't we? And I'll be honest, I had my questions about this format when it was presented to me a couple years ago, and I will have to again be honest and say that these fighters won me over after the first season. And the way they approached the adversity of turning around every 6 or 7 weeks and fighting, the way they faced the adversity of fighting twice on one night, which I've done on a couple of occasions in my career, but it was pretty early. That was a thing we did in tournament format back then. I did it in the KOK tournament in Japan, but those were rare things. Now it's become more prize fighting, one fight a night type of deal. So getting these fighters to understand what they're in for, and last season was impressive, 70+% finish rate. Just those are the guys that won me over. How the fighters dealt with that adversity was what I was most impressed with. And rolling into season 2, it's been the same thing. These guys have stepped up. They know what's on the line. They know what they need to do, and they're getting the job done. I have to think, certainly in my prime, I would have been up for this and would have been all about getting into this. Now at 56, I have to say hell no. But I get to sit right in the best seat in the house and watch these guys get after it, so it doesn't get any better than that.
We're talking to Randy Couture. He's going to be calling the action PFL Week 14, July 11th, in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Richard Hunter from Phone Booth Fighting. What do you have for Randy Couture?
Yeah, Randy, you talk about having the best seat in the house, doing that commentary, and one thing that's really stood out to me as I've become more and more of an avid watcher of PFL is the stellar commentary team, and it occurred to me the other day, you guys have a 3-man booth between yourself and Sean O'Connell and Yves Edwards. You've got 3 guys in a 3-man booth, all of whom have competed at a top level. And it occurred to me when I was watching that the other night, I don't think that's ever happened before. I mean, you're a veteran of doing commentary yourself, but, did you have that thought, and as you do it with PFL and not one but 2 guys who have been in there as fighters, can you feel the difference in terms of the quality of perspective you guys are able to put on those fights as a team?
I think so, and I think we've gelled. I think we've really come together. I think we understand each other. Let's be honest, Sean O'Connell's carrying the burden there. He's the one that has to do the ins and outs, and that's really the nuts and bolts of what we're putting out there. Me and Yves kind of get to step back a bit, give him some room, and let him do his thing, and then give our expertise when we see it. Yves on the telestrator is one of the things I really like about PFL's approach is the technical approach. They're putting chips in the gloves. We get to track guys in the cage where they've spent most of this fight. You get to see velocity of punches and impact and some of those things that you just don't get to see in a lot of other places. And that's been really, really cool, both as an analyst and I think as a fighter, that's stuff I would like to see too and interested in. So I think they definitely stepped up. I think having 3 fighters in a booth was a challenge at first, but we like each other. We get along. I think we both understand, or we all understand our expertise and where our areas are and kind of give each other space in those areas. So it works, and I think that's probably a rare thing.
Yeah, it's really, really quality. And speaking of quality, and this is an unpaid endorsement, but while I have the opportunity, I just want to tell you, Randy, I have really enjoyed training at Extreme Couture. I'm doing my 2nd season of Wimp to Warrior over there right now, and this season they moved the program over to Extreme Couture, and I've been in the gym, over the years doing media events, things like that, but this is my first time training there, and it's just, man, you really got a great gym running over there. So I know the check's in the mail or whatever for saying that, but but it really is. And Eric, your GM over there, runs an awesome operation and everything.
Awesome.
So just while I had a chance to say that publicly, I wanted to tell you that while you're away doing PFL, that there's not a better place to train in Las Vegas right now.
Well, thank you very much. I know Eric Nixick is amazing, and my son Ryan is in there rubbing elbows with Eric and helping him run that. Dennis Davis, who is here cornering some of our fighters at this PFL. Dennis has been a great commodity for us there at the gym. He does an amazing job, both with our amateur team and our pro team, and I couldn't be more proud of what those guys do in there. And I'll be honest, I'm not in there. I honestly, I'm traveling more than I've ever traveled in my life since I've retired from fighting, and So those guys are carrying the load. It's not me. So I'm proud of what they've done and what they're doing and how they treat the fighters and the whole thing. So thanks for mentioning that.
Well, it's very clean. Unfortunately, I'm spending so much time on my back lately that I'm inspecting the far corners of the ceiling while I'm trying to figure out how to get up on my feet. So I've had a chance to look it over. Everything's looking good. So
nice.
Yeah.
Randy, we're a little short on time here, but I do want to get to one more fight before we let you go. Kayla Harrison, Morgan Freer. I mean, Kayla Harrison's been the talk of the town. At this point in her career, how would you assess how things have gone so far?
I tell you what, I'm very pleased with Kayla, and I've gotten to know her the last 3 years. The first year commentating, because when they were in transition and rebranding the PFL, she was one of our commentators, and she was in heavy training then, and obviously signed with the PFL. And now they've built this weight class around her, which I can't even imagine the kind of pressure. Not only coming in as a two-time gold medalist in judo, but then having an organization embrace her and literally build a weight class around her with the lightweights in the female division, which I love. And there's some great competitors in there. Sarah Kaufman, obviously hugely competitive and a long history, and in some ways maybe the favorite. I don't know, but. I've been excited. I know that Kayla's her own worst critic. She said that herself. And I think we all have that tendency. She's been harder on herself than anybody else is going to be. She was with a real competitor in this last fight with Pacheco, and it went the distance. And it really bothered her that it went the distance. She felt like she should have been able to finish her. And I just didn't. I was scared she was going to get upset, frankly. Because Pacheco is a real fighter. She's got a ton of experience, 3 times more experience than Kayla has. But Kayla's judo history counts. So I like Kayla a lot, and I'm excited to see how she continues to progress. She's got a great fight coming up here on Thursday night. There's a bunch of other gals in there, including Sarah Kaufman, that are going to give her a run for her money, but I'm excited to watch that.
It all goes down. PFL Week 4, July 11th, ESPN 2, ESPN Plus. Thank you so much for your time, Randy, and we will do this again soon.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you. Be well.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. That was Randy Couture previewing PFL Week 4. Like I said, top to bottom, that is a fun card. I can't wait to watch that one. And pretty cool that you're training at his gym now, and
I'm in it. I was sincere about that. I mean, it was like he said, he's not in there a lot, so I don't see him. But I really have been so impressed with my experience over there. And there's other great places to train in Las Vegas too. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but I guess I just look at it from a perspective of, an MMA gym, if they're going to be profitable, has to walk that fine line of we got to turn out top-notch pro fighters, and we got to take that seriously, and we got to have a great program and everything. But you know what? When the amateurs and the beginners and all that kind of stuff come in, they got to be careful about how that's presented to them too. And they do just the right balance of that, I think.
We got about a minute before we go off the air, but we do want to touch on some breaking news. It appears Chad Mendes has retired, Richard?
He has retired. He said it's just the right time for him, was his quote. And right now, Chad Mendes is done.
I can't think of a better quote to go along with something like that. I mean, if he recognizes it himself, more power to him. He had a great career. Sad to see him go because I still feel like he could perform at a high level. But the guy was great while he was around. And like you said, if it's his time to go, it's his time to go. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's show. You did great today, Richard.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Gorgeous George will be back tomorrow. And thank you very much to Randy Couture for coming on the show. I think it's going to be interview heavy tomorrow. But I want to take some calls because you guys started off really well this week. And I want to hear more on your takes of UFC 239. A lot of stuff went down. For Kelly, for Richard, for myself, and for George, what the hell, and Randy Couture, you all go out, have a great day, be champions.